Most people think money problems come from bad habits, spending too much, saving too little, not budgeting correctly, but that's not what's actually controlling your financial life. Because if habits were the real issue, improvement would be linear. You'd fix one behavior, see one result, and slowly move forward. That's not what happens. What actually happens is this: you make more money and still feel behind. You cut expenses and somehow nothing changes. You become more responsible and the stress stays. That's not a personal failure. That's a system doing exactly what it was designed to do. And once you see it, a lot of confusing things suddenly make sense. Here's the first realization most people miss. You don't make financial decisions in isolation. Every choice you make, what you buy, what you delay, what you tolerate, what you accept as normal, happens inside a structure that quietly shapes outcomes before you even decide. You think about it. Your income arrives on a schedule you didn't choose. Your bills arrive on a schedule you didn't choose. And prices change without your consent. Subscriptions renew by default. Debts compound automatically. And somehow the responsibility of being good with money still lands on you. That mismatch is the clue, because the modern money system doesn't require you to be reckless to lose ground. It only requires you to be passive. And passivity is the default, not because you're lazy, but because the system rewards inattention and punishes awareness. This is why the same patterns repeat across different lives. People feel like they're running on a treadmill. Raises disappear, savings stall, financial stress becomes background noise instead of an emergency. Not dramatic, not catastrophic, just constant. That's the system working smoothly. And here's the part most advice skips. The system doesn't control you by force. It controls you by friction, tiny frictions in the wrong places, tiny conveniences in the wrong directions. It's easy to spend. It's automatic to renew. It's effortless to upgrade, but it takes intention to cancel. Effort to optimize, energy to step back and evaluate. That imbalance isn't accidental. When effort flows in one direction, behavior follows. This is why, just be disciplined advice fails so many people. Discipline fights friction every day. Systems win by default. And the money system you live inside was not designed around your long-term stability. It was designed around flow, constant movement of money, predictable payments, recurring extraction, not malicious, just optimized. Once you understand that, something important clicks. Your financial life isn't chaotic, it's patterned. And those patterns repeat regardless of income level. That's why someone earning $60,000 can feel just as trapped as someone earning $160,000. Because the system scales with you. Expenses scale, expectations scale. Commitments scale, and the finish line keeps moving. This is also why working harder rarely solves the problem. Effort increases input, but the system quietly increases output demands at the same time. So you feel like you're improving without actually getting ahead. That's not an accident. That's structural. Here's a simple way to see it. Ask yourself when money decisions are actually made, not when you think about them, but when they're locked in. Rent increases are locked in annually. Insurance premiums renew by default. Subscriptions quietly roll over. Debt interest compounds mathematically. By the time you feel discomfort, the decision already happened. You're reacting, not choosing. This creates the core illusion of modern money life. It feels like freedom because nothing is forced. But it behaves like constraint because everything is pre-shaped. You're free to choose inside boundaries that quietly narrow over time. That's why the system feels invisible. You don't see chains. You feel pressure. You don't notice control. You notice stress. And because it's subtle, most people internalize it. They assume the problem is them. I should be better at this. I must be doing something wrong. Other people have it figured out. But here's the truth most people never hear. If millions of people across different incomes, cities, and backgrounds experience the same financial friction, the problem isn't individual behavior. It's the environment shaping that behavior. And once you stop blaming yourself, you gain something powerful: Clarity, because clarity lets you stop fighting symptoms and start identifying leverage. That's what this video is about. Not budgeting harder, not hustling more, not shaming yourself into discipline, but learning how to see the invisible system you've been living inside so you can stop playing by default rules that were never designed for you. In the next section, we'll break down how this system quietly trains your behavior long before you make a single conscious decision. And once you see that, you'll never look at normal money life the same way again. The money system doesn't wait for your choices. It shapes them in advance. Long before you decide what to spend, save, or tolerate, your behavior is already being guided by how time, effort, and attention are structured around money. This is the part almost nobody notices, because conditioning doesn't feel like control. It feels like normal life. Start with time. Notice when money requires your attention and when it doesn't. Your paycheck arrives automatically. Your bills are paid automatically. Your subscriptions renew automatically. Money moves constantly without asking you. But the moment you want to change something, time suddenly appears. Canceling takes time. Comparing options takes time. Negotiating takes time. Optimizing takes time. And time is the one thing most people feel they don't have. That imbalance isn't accidental. When change requires effort and maintenance doesn't, the system is quietly training you to maintain. Not because you consciously choose to, but because you're tired. This creates a subtle loop, the way where decisions get postponed, not because they aren't important, but because they feel mentally expensive. So you tell yourself you'll deal with it later, or when things calm down, or once you make more money. Later rarely comes because the system is very good at keeping you just busy enough. Now look at scale. Most money decisions today don't feel big. They're small, incremental, and reasonable. An extra $10 here, a slightly better plan there, a convenience fee that doesn't seem worth thinking about. Nothing dramatic, nothing that triggers alarm. But these decisions don't stay small. They stack. And stacking is where control hides. A single subscription doesn't matter. 5 don't seem to matter. 12 start to matter. But now canceling feels overwhelming. Not financially, but cognitively. So people freeze. And freezing looks like passivity. This is why the system doesn't push you into debt all at once. It nudges you into commitment density, lots of small obligations, lots of quiet defaults, lots of reasonable monthly drains, individually harmless, collectively restrictive. Over time, flexibility disappears, not because you failed, but because flexibility was slowly traded for convenience. This is also how future thinking gets weakened. The system constantly pulls decisions into the present. Buy now, pay monthly, enjoy immediately. Costs are delayed, consequences are abstract, trade-offs are blurred. The present feels easy and the future feels vague. But your future self is the one who pays for today's convenience. And because you never meet them, their voice is quiet. The system exploits that gap. It makes short-term comfort loud and long-term impact barely audible. And this is why saving feels hard, even when spending feels effortless. Saving requires imagining a future that doesn't feel emotionally real yet. Spending delivers certainty right now. Then there's social normalization. The system rewards normality. Doing what everyone else is doing feels safe. Deviating feels risky. So when your financial life looks like everyone else's, similar bills, similar stress, similar stagnation, it feels acceptable, uncomfortable, but normal. And normal is powerful because normal removes urgency. You're not failing, you're just like everyone else. That belief keeps people inside patterns far longer than logic would ever justify. This is why the system doesn't need to hide information. Most information is available. Fees are disclosed, rates are published, alternatives exist. The problem isn't access, it's activation. Knowing something exists isn't the same as acting on it. And action is exactly what the system quietly discourages because action disrupts predictability. Predictable payments, predictable spending, predictable cash flow. From the system's perspective, Predictability is success. The system doesn't need you to be irrational. It just needs you to be busy, distracted, and compliant. You don't have to make bad decisions. You only have to keep making default ones. Defaults are where the real power lives. Default renewals, default minimum payments, default contribution rates, default lifestyles. And defaults feel neutral, but they aren't. They're pre selected outcomes. And every time you accept one, you're agreeing to a future you didn't consciously design. That's why financial life often feels like something that happens to you, not through force, but through structure. Motivation alone doesn't fix this because motivation spikes and systems persist. You can't outmotivate an environment that quietly drains attention every day, which leads to the real shift. If your environment shapes behavior, then changing behavior means changing the environment, not just your mindset. That's where leverage starts to appear. In the next section, we'll break down the three invisible mechanisms the money system uses to keep people locked in place. And once you see them, you stop reacting and start repositioning. Once you understand that money behavior is shaped by environment, the next step is seeing the specific mechanisms that environment uses. There are three of them, and almost everyone lives under their influence without realizing it. They don't feel aggressive or manipulative. They feel normal. That's why they're effective. The first mechanism is default capture. Most financial outcomes aren't chosen, they're accepted. Default settings decide contribution rates, payment timing, renewal cycles, minimums, and upgrades. Defaults feel neutral because no active decision is required, but they quietly lock you into paths that favor consistency over optimization. Once a default is accepted, changing it requires effort, attention, and usually discomfort. So most people don't change it, they live inside it. Default capture is powerful because it removes urgency. Nothing feels wrong enough to fix. Bills are paid, life continues, but over time, defaults shape your future more than any dramatic decision ever could. Minimum payments stretch debt, low default savings rates delay independence, automatic renewals create expense creep. None of this feels reckless. It just feels normal. The second mechanism is friction asymmetry. The system makes it easy to move money out and hard to pull it back. Spending is fast, canceling is slow. Signing up takes seconds, leaving takes minutes, sometimes hours. Comparing alternatives requires research. Negotiating requires confidence and time. The path of least resistance is always the path that benefits the system, not you. This asymmetry trains behavior. When something feels annoying to fix, people tolerate it longer than they should, not because they like it, but because their mental energy is limited. Friction doesn't stop action entirely. It delays it, and delay is often enough to preserve the status quo. The third mechanism is future discounting. The system constantly nudges you to value now more than later. Monthly payments soften prices. Buy now, pay later removes friction from spending. Interest hides true cost. Time becomes blurry. Consequences feel distant, but money is just delayed reality. Every convenience today creates constraint tomorrow. The system counts on the fact that tomorrow doesn't feel real enough to override today. These three mechanisms work together. Defaults lock you in. Friction keeps you there. Future discounting prevents urgency to escape. None of them require force. They just require you to keep living a normal life. Once you see this, something important changes. You stop asking why you lack discipline and start asking where defaults are shaping outcomes. You stop blaming yourself for inaction and start noticing where friction is steering behavior. You stop assuming future goals will take care of themselves and start recognizing that time is being traded quietly every month. This shift is powerful because it changes where you look for solutions. Instead of trying to control yourself harder, you start redesigning what you're exposed to. Instead of relying on motivation, you build alignment. Instead of fighting impulses, you remove the systems that generate them. For example, most people think saving is about willpower, but in reality, saving is about default direction. When money is routed automatically towards spending, saving feels like deprivation. When money is routed automatically towards saving, spending becomes the conscious choice. The behavior flips without effort. The system you build determines which choice feels hard. The same is true for debt, subscriptions, lifestyle creep, and even career pressure. When everything expands by default, stability requires constant resistance. But when stability is the default, expansion becomes intentional. One requires energy forever. Now, the other requires clarity once. This is where most advice goes wrong. It treats symptoms instead of structure. It tells you to track spending instead of questioning why spending is frictionless. It tells you to budget instead of asking why defaults weren't designed around your goals. It tells you to, hustle more instead of asking why, income gains are pre-committed before they arrive. Once you see the system clearly, you also stop seeing it as personal. You realize millions of people are reacting to the same incentives, the same frictions, and the same defaults. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And here's the most important realization in this section. You don't escape the money system by opting out of society or rejecting modern life. You escape it by learning how to position yourself differently inside it. You don't need to fight every mechanism. You just need to stop letting them operate invisibly. When defaults are chosen consciously, they work for you. When friction is placed intentionally, it protects you. When future costs are made emotionally real, decisions change naturally. None of this requires perfection. It requires awareness. In the final section, we'll tie everything together and show how to apply this understanding in a way that actually reduces financial pressure instead of adding more rules to follow. Not a checklist, not a budget template, but a different way of seeing money that permanently changes how it behaves in your life. Once you see the system clearly, money stops feeling mysterious. The stress doesn't vanish overnight, but it stops feeling personal. You realize you were never broken. You were navigating an environment that quietly shaped outcomes long before you noticed them. That realization alone removes a massive amount of pressure. Most people try to improve their finances by adding effort. More tracking, more discipline, more rules. But effort is fragile. It fades when life gets busy. Systems don't. That's why the real shift isn't trying harder. It's redesigning what happens automatically. This starts with a simple question. Where is money moving by default in your life right now? Not where you intend it to go, but where it actually goes without your attention. That's where the system has the most power. And that's where small changes create outsized impact. When you redirect defaults, behavior changes without constant decision making. Saving stops feeling like resistance because it happens before spending. Debt stops growing quietly because payments interrupt compounding. Expenses stop creeping because renewals require awareness. None of this is dramatic, it's subtle. But subtle changes applied consistently outperform heroic effort every time. The same logic applies to friction. Friction isn't bad, it just needs to be placed intentionally. When spending is effortless and saving is difficult, outcomes are predictable. But when friction protects what matters and convenience supports your goals, decisions get easier instead of harder. You don't need more willpower. You need fewer traps. This also reframes future thinking. Instead of asking yourself to care more about the future, you bring the future closer. You make long-term consequences visible now. You shorten feedback loops. You stop letting time hide trade-offs. When future costs feel real, present decisions change naturally. Not because you're forcing yourself, but because clarity replaces impulse. This is what escaping the invisible money system actually looks like. Not rejecting modern life, not opting out, not extreme minimalism. Just awareness plus intentional design. You still live in the system. You just stop letting it run in the background unchecked. Once you do this, money stops behaving like a constant source of stress and starts behaving like a tool, not perfectly, not instantly, but predictably. And predictability is what creates calm. You also stop comparing yourself to everyone else because you realize most people are still running on defaults they never chose. Their normal isn't a benchmark, it's a warning. And the moment you stop measuring success by what looks normal, you gain freedom most people never experience. The goal was never to be perfect with money. The goal was to stop being quietly controlled by it. And that control was never about spending too much or earning too little. It was about not seeing the system clearly enough to push back. Now you can. And once you see it, you don't unsee it. You start noticing where money moves automatically, where friction shows up, where time hides cost. And every time you notice it, you regain a little leverage. That's how real change happens. Not all at once, not with a dramatic moment, but with clarity that permanently alters how you interact with the world around you. The invisible system only works when you can't see it. Once you can, it loses its grip.